Hi, I'm Dave Sidden with Wildlife Images. I've been working with animals pretty much my entire life, and during that time I've had some experiences that have given rise to some pretty great stories. There was Jane the bear, who came to us all the way from Palermo, Italy. Clark the cougar, he'd been poorly declawed and mistreated. We took him in and gave him a permanent home that he needed. Bruce the one-eyed eagle, he'd suffered a gunshot wound to the head, but he survived, and we made sure that he got to live out his life in style. One of the best known stories to come out of Wildlife Images is the one about the grizzly and the tabby. That's right, a grizzly bear and a house cat became fast friends. Those stories are all true. Hey, I couldn't make this stuff up, but this isn't really about those stories. Besides, people can hear all the stories when they come to visit our location. This is actually about the two most important stories of all. I'll get to the most important story in a minute. Right now, the second most important story, the Wildlife Images story. My dad, J. David Sidden, had been involved with animals for many years when he jumped at the opportunity to get a chunk of land near the famous Rogue River in southern Oregon. He started Wildlife Images in 1981. Things were pretty lean back then, and my dad struggled to keep the doors open. For a time, the facility got by on the money earned by a hawk who starred in Buick commercials.
Introducing Skyhawk with a V6 engine.
In 1996, shortly before he passed away, Dad asked me to come on board and keep his dream alive. I've been here ever since. It's hard to quantify the amount of good that's accomplished by the facility and the people who work here. We're dedicated to the care and treatment of sick, injured, and orphaned wildlife indigenous to the Pacific Northwest. Wildlife Images is sort of a 24-acre living laboratory, operated by highly skilled staff and volunteers alike. Like any 501c3 nonprofit operating in a tough economic climate, Wildlife Images is faced with some unique challenges. To remain viable economically, we need to depend on the generosity of businesses, large and small, supporters, and general public. Donations are needed for three primary areas: ongoing operations, the building fund for future projects, and the endowment funds. Contributions to Wildlife Images can come from many forms: tax-deductible donations and endowment giving, estate giving, donations of stocks and bonds, real estate and materials, as well as volunteer and service opportunities. The generosity of public and private donors is what enables Wildlife Images to provide a sanctuary for sick, injured, and orphaned wildlife at no cost to the general public. We receive no funding from the state or federal government. Wildlife Images relies solely on the contributions from individuals and organizations to carry out our dual mission of rehabilitation and education. Every dime that we receive is tremendously appreciated and used to its fullest capacity. The stories we hinted at earlier about Jane the bear, Clark the cougar, Bruce the eagle, and the legendary grizzly and tabby cat, these are all animals we took in but couldn't be released back into the wild. But the fact is, most of the wildlife received at Wildlife Images are released back into the wild. And for those of us who have been able to take part in those releases, it's an exhilarating and rewarding experience. Wildlife Images receives and cares for as many as 2,000 animals every year. That adds up to tens of thousands over the years since we came into being. Each one a magnificent creature that would have perished without our help. Now, back to that most important story I mentioned earlier. Well, that story hasn't been told yet, because it's the story of the future of Wildlife Images. What does the future hold? Nobody knows for sure, but we do know that, unfortunately, as long as there are sick, injured, orphaned wildlife, Wildlife Images will remain dedicated to helping them all.